Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome to my channel. Thanks so much for joining me. And if you like what you see, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So I wanted to say a few words today about the assessments in this class, especially the multiple choice tests and quizzes. So there's basically two things that you're being assessed on and rewarded with marks for in this class. So the first is showing your willingness and ability to think about and explore someone else's ideas. And that's what the weekly discussion boards are about. You practicing that. You're expected to understand and think about the ideas of the thinkers I'm discussing, my ideas, and then the ideas of at least two of your colleagues. If you make a worthy attempt at that, you will certainly get all the marks. The second kind of assessment is trying to establish your ability to understand precisely someone else's ideas and to retain that understanding and knowledge. So this involves the ability to distinguish my ideas and those of the people we study from your own, and accurately and precisely understand the ideas that are not exactly yours, or that you may even disagree with, or consider to be a foolish waste of time, or be bored by, or not have time for. So that's the main point of the quizzes and the multiple choice tests and the guided discussion posts on the midterm and the final, where I mark you for your clear and accurate understanding above all. Let's take a closer look at the multiple choice questions. I know that they might seem often, and that they generally do in classes like this, to be a kind of trivial pursuit. And in some cases, they come close to that. Many of us are trying to figure out ways, my colleagues and I mean, are trying to figure out ways that we could test your accurate understanding without putting too much more work on ourselves. So if there were four people in this class, I would certainly meet with you individually and we would have conversations to test this and presumably to, improve both of our understandings. But given the 200 or more students that we're typically teaching each semester, it's difficult to provide even the amount of personal attention and interaction that we do. This is a bug of education as we now do it. I come back to some of these questions that I'm talking about today in lesson 7 of this course on intelligence, and you'll have a chance to voice more of your own thoughts on school, learning, and assessment there. I make a distinction there between information, knowledge, and understanding. Again, this is my distinction, but something for you to explore and understand so that I can test you on your understanding of my understanding, regardless of what you actually think of it, though I'm not uninterested in what you think of it. So, what do I mean by that? And I'll go into this in more detail in lesson 7. Understanding, though, is something you do, and it's different from the meaningless memorization that school has often encouraged you to do. Remembering new things, including some of the details, is part of carrying understanding around with you. You have you have meaningful information in your head, not on your phone. Especially since the advent of the internet, a kind of distracted partial understanding seems to have become much more common. People hear new ideas, often attentively or with interest. It makes them think something in their own heads, usually something they've already at least partly thought before. This is what often is referred to as relatable. And then they attach their own thoughts to the new concept without being careful enough to understand the thought on its own terms. Again, this is normal and probably seems like an accepted way of pursuing things in the world to you. Uh, but you can think whatever and believe whatever you want, and it's what I think that really matters. I mean, for you individually, it's what you think. Um, but classes like this and learning in general in school are actually designed to push you away from that kind of easy appropriation and imprecise use of other people's ideas. It's encouraging you to practice a deeper understanding of the ideas in their otherness before you simply transform them into whatever ideas of your own you want to have. One of the reasons for you to develop a precise understanding of the ideas in their own terms or in mine is because we are part of a community of understanding here, at least in this class, and I think in the world, or hopefully, ideally in the world. And communication is better if we all understand things in a shared and similar way, whatever we think of them, not just whatever interests us personally or fits in with whatever we already think. Um, so when I think about how when I think about how we use other people's ideas and words, um, and how we often don't fully understand them or take them on board or understand them in their difference, um, I'm often reminded of a scene in a British children's book that a few of you might have heard of, Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. This is the sequel to Alice in Wonderland, another famous English classic. The central character in the book, Alice, encounters at one point another popular figure from English nursery rhymes, Humpty Dumpty. So Humpty Dumpty is this egg-shaped creature who is sitting high on a wall, and he's the very embodiment of personal privilege. But because he's an egg, we all understand that he is actually fragile, even more fragile than we are in some ways, because he is up there and can fall, and he is just an egg, easily broken, despite all his vanity and self-satisfiedness. So the version of the nursery rhyme I learned went something like this when I was a child. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. And he actually talks in the scene about how he's a friend of the king, and the king will do this and that for him, and so on. I'm going to show you now a clip from a 1973 TV adaptation of part of this scene from the book.
And that shows there are 364 days when you might get an unbirthday present.
Certainly.
And only one for birthday presents, you know. There's glory for you.
I don't know what you mean by glory.
Of course you don't, till I tell you. I meant there's a nice knockdown argument for you.
But glory doesn't mean a nice knockdown argument.
When I use a word, it means what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less.
The question is whether you can make words mean so many different things.
The question is, which is to be master, that's all.
When I use words, they mean exactly what I want them to mean. I'm the master. Sometimes I hear echoes of that when people object to having to understand the difference, for instance, between hyperreality and virtual reality in this class. And they'll say, well, that's what it meant to me, or that's how I like to think about it. But have they really spent enough time understanding the distinction that I made? So you don't have to like or agree with the facts or the ideas presented in the class, but you are being tested on whether you have taken them on board in your meat mind here and understood them apart from only what they mean to you in some kind of brief and superficial encounter. That's the work. Once you have actually understood them, you can decide what you think of them and tear them another one if you want to. Let's look at two of the multiple choice questions from the quiz, just to give you an example of what they look like, and I want to talk about each one a bit. So here's the first one. Which of the following was not one of Taylor's plans for increasing the profit of the owners of the business? Easing the labor of the workers, lowering workers' wages, timing different workers and then applying the practices of the most efficient ones, adopting workers' ideas for increased productivity, removing anything superfluous in the process. I kind of feel like this is the hardest question on the quiz that's coming up for weeks 2 and 3, lessons 2 and 3. Many of you may barely remember who Taylor was. You may confuse his ideas with those of Marx or someone else mentioned in the lesson. It's not surprising, but it is what you are supposed to be fighting against in this class, to learn by reading with focus, reviewing when possible, testing your understanding in the forums, asking questions, and forcing yourself to get involved for better or worse. So, to both remember and understand things that are in this material. I think it's a tricky and an annoying question, but I don't think it's really a meaningful Trivial Pursuit question. The correct answer is B, lowering worker wages. If you got that right, congratulate yourself. The reason it isn't just a Trivial Pursuit question is because it is designed to test your precise understanding of what I told you about Taylor. When reading about him, you could have been inclined to think he's just on the side of the bosses wanting to exploit the workers in any way he can. And, there's something to that way of thinking about him. That was the aspect that I was trying to drive home about what he was doing, despite what its positive sides might be. But he wasn't actually against, so he wasn't against exploiting the workers and treating them as machines. But trying to lower their wages wasn't part of it. So in our world, you may have come to accept that low wages are the chief values and the main form of capitalist exploitation and the biggest problem. But that's not even what this lesson is about, wages. So it's about the meaningfulness of work and treating people like machines so that they feel like machines in their jobs. Lowering wages wasn't part of Taylor's thinking. And I'm trying to show there how he may have meant well or was not focused on money the way we were, but was focused on production and efficiency more than like other ways of getting surplus value out of workers. He was actually interested to some extent in easing the work life of the workers, mostly again for profit or efficiency, but nonetheless, he wasn't interested in focusing on exploiting them financially. So if you understood his story fully, you would see that B was the correct answer, I think. If you understood it vaguely or without paying attention to the details, maybe you wouldn't. Let's look at one other multiple choice question. Who coined the term hyperreality? Stanley Milgram, Marshall McLuhan, Sheldon Cooper, Jean Baudrillard, Neil Postman. This is closer to a Trivial Pursuit kind of question, but in the context of learning and this class, it is again testing your precise and detailed knowledge rather than vague impressions of the lesson. You've heard all those names in the first 3 lessons, but only one of them is the coiner of the term. Why might knowing which one it is matter? Because you are going to be discussing the ideas in this course, and possibly outside in the rest of the world. If you say something about pornography and then say, well, you know what Marshall McLuhan would say about that, we won't understand you, because you mean Jean Baudrillard, and you are spreading misinformation. Understanding precisely is to work against the personal mastery Humpty Dumpty thinks communication is about. And the way Humpty Dumpty thinks reminds me of nobody so much as Donald Trump and fake news. Things just mean what I want them to mean because I have power. It's power over true understanding and knowledge, earned understanding and knowledge. It's to work against that mastery model of communication and language and ideas, and toward a shared use of knowledge for communication and true engagement with each other. That at least is the ideal. If you have questions or thoughts about any of this, you can share them with me by email, or you can wait until the lesson on intelligence and air them in the discussion boards. I struggle with the evaluation part of my job a lot. It's obviously, well, maybe it's not obvious, but it's what I least like about teaching. Most of us, at least my colleagues in my department, don't like it, assigning marks. And I feel I can still learn and grow as a teacher, assuming that role still makes sense and I keep on doing it. I want to, but I'm not ready yet to give up the idea of testing accurate and precise knowledge. Though I'm interested in ways I could do it differently, and I'm interested in arguments against it for the education of the future, assuming that I'm actually part of that. Or even if I'm not, because it interests me. All right, I look forward to seeing what you have to say, if anything, about this, maybe later on in the course or at any time. And if not, then just keep on keeping on and do your thing. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Bye for now.